As we can see in this picture, we have different options available with us. Sum of expenses, sum of sales, sum of create here, and we have the filter option here available with the country. So let me go back to my sheet, financial sample. Let me enlarge this chart. Now, what we can see here, we have the total values for the sum of the profit, and this is for different countries. We have for Canada, France, Germany, Mexico, United States of America. And similarly, we have the sum of profit here as we are doing it for one numerical value as well, only one numeric field. So if in the country, I will be having the filtration option, I'll be just going with the Canada and clicking on OK. So this time you can see here the changes are visible in the pivot table as well as in the pivot chart also. So we have now products sum of profit only for the country Canada this time. We have the different products here. All 6 products are listed here and we have the graph with us. Let me take for maybe France and Germany as well now. So basically I'm having it for the 3 countries this time. So let me give this time to this pivot chart and then we have the values for sum of profit. So even after doing the changes here, what we are doing here, we are making changes here in the sum of profit and we are having the values for different products as well. So similarly, what we can do, we can make the changes here for other values as well. You can have the different values here. You want to have it for the gross sales, you can have it here. You want to have it for the discount, you can have it here. You can add any other field as well. So this is the power of the pivot chart. Let me try this time some other charts now. Let me delete this one. So I have the table here. Let me come back to the complete set of the values. I'm selecting all the countries here. So this was the data. So again, let me add some more columns now. This time in the section, in this pivot table, I'm adding one more column, that is year. Now so you can see the values here. You have it for the country Canada and the other countries. You have the values for different products and this is grouped according to year wise. You have the value for sum of profit only. Now let's see what are the changes in the column chart. So I will be going back to pivot table analyze and clicking on the pivot chart, and let me click on this column chart. So let me enlarge this. So this is some overlapping of the data because I have the multiple set of the values here. So if I make it more enlarged, in that way somehow I can see it here. So this is a huge data. So that's why we have the data like this. But it is visible now. So you can see here it is available for Canada. And again in the case of the Canada, first it is showing the values for 2013, then for 14, 13, 14, 13, 14, you can see here. And similarly for other countries as well. So let me take the values for only the product. This is umbrella. I'm only taking the first product, and this time you can see the changes here very beautifully. In just one click, you can actually change this pivot chart. You can view the information according to your need now. So here also you can choose if I want to go for any particular, let me select only 2014 here. In that case, so I have the result something like this. So accordingly, I can add one more country as well. I can delete the country. I can have the multiple information for the product as well. I can go for the least one also. I can go for the maximum one also. And similarly, I can go for the year one also. So this is pivot chart. This is the column chart we covered. If I take here the 3D column, we just had a view preview here in the column here only. What are the difference between the 3D chart? Let me delete this pivot chart and going back to the data, let me filter out everything here. So I have the information, whatever I have available here. So I am having all the values here. So let me take it for 2013 as well. So this is the complete data set now. I'll be going back to pivot table analyze and clicking on the pivot chart. Let me take a 3D column here. Once I am taking a 3D column, to see it carefully, let me select the country only, Mexico, and clicking on OK. So this is the result of the 3D column. So this kind of output you will be receiving in case of the 3D column, and similarly you can go for the stacked one also. If I go and check the values for stacked column, so let me take a stacked column here, pivot chart. So in the stacked column, this is the stacked column. So this will be output like this, or I can have something like 100% stacked column as well. You can have a 3D column as well. So this is the value for the stacked column here. So stacked column, you can cover it into the mathematics. What is stacked column? It gives a ratio for the with respect to the other values. So this is the column chart. So let's have a look on the pivot chart for a pie chart as well now. So in the pivot chart, we have the pie chart. So what we are doing here, in the pivot table analyze, we are going to pivot chart. In the pivot chart, we have pie here. So column we already covered. Let me take this pie chart here to have a pie chart value here. So for the same things what I am doing, I am having the value for sum of profit, total, country, product and year. So this in this, let's make some changes in the pivot table. I'll be having the fields here. Let me go back to the pivot table sheet here. Let me delete this and come to the pivot table option. So let's try here the pie chart. So I'm going to pivot table analyze here. In the pivot chart, we have the option for the pie as well. In this pie as well, let me try this time some other values. So let me go back to this pivot table here. In that, in that pivot table fields, in the field list, what we are doing, let me unselect this profit as well, year as well, and even I'm not taking the country and the product as well. So this time, let me take this segment and let me take the unit sold this time. So unit sold we have for each segment, what how many units we have sold. So I will be selecting into the another values. So we have in the rows segment, and for the values I have sum of units sold. And let me make a pie chart for these values. I will be clicking on the pie chart. You can see the preview as well. So you have the values for the channel partners, you have the value for the enterprise, government, mid market, and small business as well. So according to your data, you can decide what kind of chart you want to have for the column chart or the bar column chart or a line column. You can decide accordingly. And similarly, we have the option for the filtration as well. You can sort it also accordingly. You can make the sorting as well. You can make and sorting into this descending order as well. Similarly, you actually can work with the design of the pivot chart set. So this time what I'm doing, I'm clicking on this chart and you can see here there are two more tabs with you. This is design and format. In that design and format, you can choose a different design. So this was the default one. If I click on this, I have this kind of output. If I click on this and similarly I have some other designs as well. You don't need to do anything. You can choose a particular theme you can apply on your pivot chart. Either it is a column chart or either it is a pie chart. You can have it and apply it. See, I can change the colors as well. I have layout with me. I can switch the rows and the column. I can change the data range as well. I can change the chart type as well. I can move it to the different location as well. In the format, what we have, again, we can make a changes with the shape fill, shape outline. So all the changes we can do it here with this pivot chart. Now let's try one more time. This time let me take something as country and discount. This time I will be deleting this as well. So this time let me make the changes in the pivot table. So this time let me take country back, and in case of unit sold, I am taking here discounts. So I have two values here now. So this we are right now we have only for one country. Let me select for other countries as well. So for all five countries, I have the sum of discounts with me. I can change this formula as well. I can have the count here. I can have the product here. I can have the maximum value or the standard deviation variance. Anything I can have right now for the default purpose. I'm taking sum of defaults. And then I will be going back here. In that case, let me look for the pivot chart. This time, let me take the bar chart here. So you can see here the bar chart is with you. The value is something like this. So you can have the output like that also. So rather than having a column chart, you can have the bar chart as well. So country option is there, filtration you can do. So if I try design for this bar chart, so you can see different themes also here. So I'll go with the style 2, style 3, 4, 5, 6. You can see all the changes here. See, this output is so impressive here. And so according to your design, you can decide which theme you want to apply on your chart. And this actually gives a user a look, a very good look. So it is easy for your client to understand the scenario or the data analytics behind the data. And it is easy and impressive way to make them understand as well. Similarly, we have the other options, changing colors as changing theme. We have the option for switching the rows and the column. If you see this description given by the Microsoft Excel, swap the data over the axis. Data being charted on the x-axis will move to the y-axis and vice versa. Select the data. With the selecting of the data, what you can do, you can actually change the data range. This is inclusive in the chart. You can have a different type as well. You can move it to the different location here. Move this chart to another sheet or tab in the worksheet. So this is pivot chart. Let's try one more this time. I'll have another values now. So let me take here year and month. Let's have something on with the dates now. I'm taking here year and then I'm taking here product and I'm having month name as well. And plus I'll have the profit here. So this time in the columns, I will be putting year. So in the column we have year, in the row we have product and monthly, in the values we have sum of profit. And let me try now a different chart type. So in that Power Pivot or pivot table analyze, I have pivot chart with me, and then let me go to this line thing. Here in the line thing, you can actually have the data with you. So you can see here the output here. So this is given here for year 2013 as well for 2014. So sum of profit, you can actually see the trend, how your profit is moving and going back and coming back. It is increasing or decreasing. So rather than seeing the values, you can have a look on the graph and you can understand your business, how your profit is affected by different factors. So if you can see it is going into the negative, at that time you can analyze what should be the reason behind that. Why the profit is not coming in the expected way. So this is all about the pivot chart. You have the different options available with you. So whatever you want to choose, you can have it. But according to your data, according to your requirement, according to your client's expectation. Now, next we have the slicer. Slicer also we covered. Let's take a deeper look this time. So let me come back to a simpler kind of a data, or let me work on this only. So this time I will be clicking on this filter and insert slicer. Insert slicer. In the slicer, let me simplify this form. So I will be, let me delete this for now. So this time what I am taking here, I am taking here country as back, and I'll be including product as well, and then I'll have sum of profit. I'll uncheck other things from here. So I have, this is the output, the basic output I am having. In the rows I have the country, I have the product, and in the values I have sum of profit. Now let me click on the slicer. I will be clicking on the slicer. Now in the slicer you can have anything here. Let me take in the slicer year. I'm taking here as year. Now you have the slicer with you. In the slicer, if I click on 2013, I have a different output now, and this output is only related to year 2013. If I click on 2014, this output is only for year 2014. So this is the functionality of the slicer. You can actually have the result according to one particular kind of filtration. So what if I want to have multiple values here? So if I see the description here, this option is for multiple select. You can choose Alt plus S here. This is for clearing the filtration. Right now 2014 is selected. Let me clear it out. Or you can say it there. Now this time both the things are selected here. If I click on one particular thing, this is for only 2013. If I click on this, this is for 2014. Now the condition is that I want to choose all the options available. So this is for multiple select. Once I clicked on that, this multi-select is enabled now. Now I can have the option or for choosing the multiple values from this slicer. So this slicer is actually enhancing your pivot table's performance by providing the filtration here. So time this filtration is based on some other column, on some other values, and then you can filter it out your slicer. Now once you have the slicer with you, you got one more tab, and this tab is slicer. Now in that tab you have different options. What are those options? So this design is with you. So if I click on that, you can see the beauty of the slicer tab. This is with a different color now. So I can have a gray shade, I want to have a red shade, a maroon shade, or your any favorite color. In my case, sea green is my favorite color, so I can have that output as well. So you want to have some new slicer style, so you can click on that also. So this new slicer style, for whole slicer I want to do some formatting. So let me do some formatting here. I want to have a bold italic format. In the fill part I want to have maybe a yellow color, and click on OK. So this, I'll be making a new theme here. This time I have a theme here, so you can see here that already available the themes. We have the light and dark. This time I have the customized one. So this is my customized theme. Of course, it is not looking so nice, but for the trial, you can choose it. So in the slicer, once you have the slicer, you have one more tab enabled with Microsoft Excel, that is slicer. There you can change the slicer style. So you can choose from any predefined theme, or you can make your own customized theme as well from the option new slicer style. And then you can give the caption as well. Let me give this caption as year. So if I write here specific year, so you can see the changes here. So this is not dependent on the field only. So like you can name a pivot table, you can name a power pivot, you can name a table. In the similar way, we have the option for the slicer as well. Slicer settings you can do. So you have different options, ascending, descending order. You want to have a different name, that you can choose it from here. Then you can choose it the theme here. Alignment you want to do, that you can do it here. You want to show the grid lines or not. If you want to have a height, a specific height and width, that also you can do. Let me make it to two columns this time. So you can see it output like this. If I increase it here, so this is leaving a space for the third column. So in my case, I have only two options, so I'll go with the column one. Like if you're having multiple values here, then you can have a different column set here. So, but it will be working in the same things only. So let me add one more slicer here. This time I'm adding a slicer based on, let me go back to my pivot table. In that pivot table analyze, I'm coming with insert slicer with the month name this time. So I have one more slicer with me. So I can choose these output as well. So for example, I am choosing here 2014 and then I'm clicking on September. So this is data only for September 2014. So you can work on multiple slicers as well, and I can again make the changes like I can choose a theme, I can make it bring forward, send backward, selection pane. I can make changes with the alignment. Let me do the changes here for the column. So that will be more interesting one. So if I do it, make it two columns, you can actually see the output carefully. So if I click on 2013, you can see all the months here. And similarly, you can have it for based on any other field as well. So adding month name also is a good option. So let me delete it for now, this slicer. And then we have one more other option, that is pivot table analyze, that is with insert timeline. So this timeline is basically responsible for the date kind of a fields. That is why it is only showing the date field, not bothered about other things here. If I click on the date, now I have this timeline with me. So you can actually drag and drop here, or I actually move the timeline here. So this time I have only selection for 2040 or 2030. Let me start started from here. So you can see here 2030, January, February, March, April, and if I scroll it to the right side, then I have a 2014. So if I want to choose a particular field, let me click on this. Now it is showing the output only for January 30. Let me go back and choose it for the December for 2014. So it is having the output accordingly. So according to that particular timeline, you can restrict your output, whatever you want to have it here, you can have it with your date. I can clear the filter as well. I can choose the multiple selection as well, or I can scroll it down as well. So this is the power of the insertion of the timeline in your data. So you can actually control your pivot table or pivot chart based on the slicer or based on the timeline. And similarly for the timeline, we have the option for timeline tab. So I can make the changes here with the different tabs. You can have your own style as well. You want to follow the light theme or a dark theme, you can decide it from here. You want to make it give a name to this timeline, you can apply there. And in the selection pane, you can choose the height and width. You want to give a header to this date, you want to have a scroll bar here, or you don't want to have a scroll bar. This is your entirely depends on your condition. You want to have a selection label also. So this selection label, let me uncheck this. So January 2014 was there, now it is not there. So this is with the show, what you want to have in the showing window, that you can decide it. You want to have a decision based on header, scroll bar, selection label, time label, that you can decide with the show ribbon. Height and width, you can make it increase level also, decrease level also. Alignment, you can set it here. You want to snap it to a grid, you want to have it to snap to shape, you want to have it to the view and grid line as well. This is up to you. So this was about adding a timeline. Let me add one more field here. So this time what I am doing, in that pivot table, I'll go back to the pivot table and the field list. I'm adding one more field here. This field is now manufacturing price. Let me add manufacturing price as well. And then let me take a timeline again. I'm adding the timeline here, date again here. So here now you can have the output according to that particular time here. So I will be having it for July, or I just want to have it for December 2014. So I have the output here for the sum of profit as well, and I have it for the sum of manufacturing price as well. So with this timeline, I can have the output according to the one particular time as well. Similarly, what you can see here months is written. In this filtration, months is written. If you want to have it in a particular quarter, now your output is divided in different quarters. One year is divided into 4 quarters. So your output is shown like that. You want to have the output for quarter one, you can see here quarter two, quarter three, quarter four, quarter five, six, seven. So this is for another year, or maybe you can see here first quarter of 2014, second quarter of 2014, third quarter of 2014, and similarly fourth quarter as well. You can have it in the form of months as well. You can have it in the form of year as well. You can have it in the form of days as well. So this list is so long now because we are having the dates for 2 years. So this is more than 600 something. So this is with the days also for. So in the timeline, we have four different options. One is years, one is quarters, one is months, and one is days. And we have different styles available with the slicer as well and the timeline as well. We can choose the theme as well. We can go for one particular alignment as well. We can go for any other kind of height, width selection and the column selection as well. Now let's try another thing. Now we have the grouping and ungrouping with us. So in the grouping and ungrouping, what we are doing, we want to I want to make this a group. So I can use it as a group selection. So this is my group now. I can provide a name to this group. I can have the totals as well in that group. And once I want to have the removing of that group, I can go back and click on ungroup. Ungroup. So this is the power with group and ungroup. We already covered the pivot chart, we covered the slicers and timeline. We use the slicer and timeline for filtering data and the pivots. Connect various pivot tables with one slicer. Yes, can do that as well. In the group also, what we can do, we can select multiple items in a field to group. We can name the group. By default, of course, it will take as group 1, group 2, group 3, but you can choose that group's name as well. You can auto group the time period as well. So if you are having the time here, like if we add a year here, and that time automatically it will be grouped here. Select the heading and then you can hit it on ungroup. Let's try it with the date thing. So if I'm adding this column date here, so I'll be adding here year, so automatically it is a part of group now. Now you have a different groups here for 2013 to 2014. So with the date we have the option available. So I'll just reread it. This auto groups the time period. That is why it is coming into a group here. And ungroup, how you can make it ungroup? You can just select the output and then you can click on the ungroup thing and you can work on ungrouping the thing. So you can have different groups or as well. Let me make it this Canada and France one group this time. So this is part of one group. So I will be clicking on group selection. So now this is a group one. So how you can change the name here? See, if you click here, so this is not visible. If you expand it only, then you can see the output here. If I right click here, I can hide it from the field list. I can do the field setting. I can remove it here. I can group and ungroup here. I have other options also available here. So once I refresh it, the data will be refreshed here. So from if I want to make it changes here, that ungroup, you can do it from the same table, that is pivot table analyze. And then we have this group ribbon. We have the option to ungroup here. So let me try one more thing this time. So I have this one entire group with me till France we have. So we can have the output, and depending on that output, see if you have this group, if you see in the pivot table, this is named as the country 2 now. So because it is part of one group, that is why into the rows we have the output as country 2, country, product, year, and in the values we have sum of profit, sum of manufacturing, price. Next, let's come back to the presentation. So this we already covered, group and ungroup. And after that, what we have this a good function with us, that is get pivot data. So what this function does, we take some few arguments like data field, pivot table, field items, field other items it is giving here, and then we have it returns the visible data from pivot table. By default, get pivot data is an active formula. So just see that and then we will come to this third point. So what we are talking about, this is my table here. So I want to have the information about this particular column. So what I'm doing here, I'll just enlarge my screen. So what I am doing here, I have the output here. So I'm going to the 60. I will be writing here any other column equals to and click on the 60. Now you can see some output here, that is get pivot data. Automatically you are getting this value. So this value is, let's explore this function. So this function is, first is data field. So the data field is sum of manufacturing price for this 60. Yes, this column exists. Then the pivot table is this A3 is the pivot table. And then we have the country is the as the pivot table column, and field 1 is column, and then we have another field item is Canada. Then we are doing it work in the product, and whatever the information is available with that particular cell, that is returned by get pivot data. So you can see it here how many arguments it is taking. It is taking data field, it is taking pivot table, it is taking in that pivot table, what it is taking, it is taking the name of the field and name of the item here. So this is get pivot data. So by default, what our presentation, what is mentioned, that by default get pivot data is an active form. If you want to turn this feature of UK. How you can do it? You can do it by selecting any cell within existing pivot table, then go to the pivot table analyze tab, pivot table options and uncheck. Let's try that. So we have this, we are into this table. I am part of this table, pivot table analyze. Click on option that is just below this pivot table name, and then you can uncheck this generate get pivot data. So this time, if I am clicking this and having value for this, so this is a normal value now. It is not returning me something as get pivot data. If I want to have that value again, by default it is selected. So this time let me uncheck and let me check that value again and generate the get pivot data. So what we have in the get pivot data now, we have the value for what fields we have. We have value for data field, we have the value for pivot table, that is field and item, and all the output is shown here in the get pivot data. So if you want to have the information about one particular value, so you can use this get pivot data if it is useful for you. So from that information you are able to know that what we can do with that particular column or particular cell. So we covered here what we covered. We covered about, we started with the advanced function of the pivot table, and we learned about some very good things here. We learned about how we can add the calculated field and calculated items in pivot table. You can have your own fields here. You can provide your name to that field or that column name. Any computation you can use it here from depending on the existing columns or your own calculation, and then you can click on OK and have the value in pivot table. Similarly, you can have it for calculated item as well. You can solve the order of those items with the solve order. You can list the formulas as well. Then we covered about using pivot chart. We learnt about the column chart, we learnt about line chart, pie chart, bar chart we covered, and we tried it on different set of values for these same financials table. We have taken output for country, we have taken output for sum of profit, sum of manufacturing price for product, or for other fields as well. So you can see the preview here, and accordingly you can choose according to your data what kind of column will be okay or will be suitable for your data. And after that, we have learned and we have talked about inserting the slicer. The slicer is used to filter the data visually. Slicers make it faster and easier to filter table and pivot tables, pivot charts, and queue functions. We learned about the timeline. Timeline deals with date interactively. You can have the values on, and based on quarter, months, and days with the option available with that timeline. For both things, for the slicer and the timeline, you can choose any specific theme as well. You can go with any particular or you on your customized theme as well with this slicer or this timeline option. After covering slicer and timeline, we talk about how we can group and ungroup the selection. We can make our on group also, and for the date automatically groups are formed. After selecting and clicking on ungrouping, you can actually ungroup the selection that you did with the option of the group selection. So this is the power of group and ungroup function or functionality. After that, we have learned about getting the information of the pivot table with the function get pivot data. By default, this get pivot data function is enabled. You can make it disabled by clicking on options and unchecking the generate get pivot data options. And how many arguments it is taking? It is taking the information based on the table, that is based on the data field, based on the pivot table. Inside that pivot table, it is giving us the information for the field as well as item. You can have the value for multiple data as well. So let me try this time for a range, whether it is working or not. So if I do it like this, it will not work. So it is giving me just range like B7 to C30. Let me try it for a entire column. So if I do it like this is not giving me value. If I try it for a row, obviously it will not give me a value. If I try for a cell, that time I will be getting information on get pivot data that is having the values on that. So these were the advanced functions of pivot table. So from that pivot table, we have entirely covered all the tabs, all the ribbons here. We learnt about keeping a name, giving options this way. We learnt about how we can have the information on the get pivot data, active fields wherever we are having the cursor, and from the field settings, you can choose what options or what function you want to have. In case of the default one, that is the sum, you can have the maximum, standard deviation, or any other function. We learned about the group selection in the detail this time. We learned about the slices and the timeline. We can change the data source as well by clicking on this change data source. We can do some kind of formatting from clear, select, moving the pivot table, and then we can have on calculation on the pivot table by field items and sets. So we can go, either option is available with the calculated field or calculated item. And from the pivot chart options, we have different options available with us. You can go for a bar chart, you can go for a column chart, you can go for pie chart. Depending on type of your data, you can choose the type of the chart. You can see the preview as well. If it does not fit your requirement, you can change it at any time as well. And if we have the pivot chart, you can save it as a in the JPG format as well. Let me show you a quick example here. So I'm just going with the default one. This is my column chart. So if I click here, right click here, and so you have option available here. So you can copy it here, and also you can save it as a picture as well. So if I click on save as picture, in by default we have the format for PNG. You can have the JPG format, GIF format, and other formats available here. You can provide your name and choose your location and save this chart as a picture as well. And later on, maybe you can put it in any presentation, you can put it into any report or any other mail, other ways you can have that value or that chart with you. So, or you can go with the recommended pivot table also. See in the recommendation, it is showing me some recommendation as sum of it is based on your pivot table only. Sum of profit by country, sum of product by country, sum of profit by segment, sum of discount, sum of COGS, other things I'm having. If I go with this sum of country, it changed everything. Now I have the country as well as the product here. So this is my option available with the pivot table analyze. We covered all the advanced function that is available with the pivot table.